Hello, my name's Gary White, here to talk about learning environments as a part of module number 7. So I want to talk about how spaces that students are in can help influence and improve the way that we teach. So I want to start off by just showing you around my classroom a little bit. I work at Rolla School District 217. USD 217. And so in the slide here are some photographs of one of two classrooms that I work in. You can see in this classroom, I feel like it maybe kind of isn't the best representation of what to do. It seems like a pretty utilitarian space that allows for quite a few students to be able to sit and work at a desktop. But one of the things that is true at our schools that we're one-to-one on Chromebooks. So you'll see in the bottom right-hand shot with students that although we've got lots of desktops in that space because the students are used to having their Chromebooks with them so often, more often than not, I find students who are using their Chromebook sitting in front of a desktop, which isn't necessarily the best use of space in my mind, and something that could be improved on. One of the things that is good about the space, it does need some static location, so the desktop computers do serve an important role in one of the classes I teach. There's some testing, some test preparation elements that have to happen on a computer that has a Microsoft Office locally on the device. It's not possible with our Chromebooks, and so it is important that I do have some fixed desktop computers in this classroom space. But what I've found is that I don't necessarily need all of the computers that are in this lab space. So the other thing you'll notice is the space isn't terribly warm and inviting. This is something, to be honest, I struggled with knowing what would be appropriate or helpful to add in the classroom space this year. One of the things that is also true, it might be a little tougher to see in the pictures. You'll notice that there's some open spaces where PCs are underneath the desk. Those are actually located where there used to be drawers in those spaces underneath the desktop. So those drawers have been pulled out, and desktops have been set in that location just to keep them off the working surface and some on the perimeter desk units. But those exterior desk units have been through a couple of floods in this below grade classroom space. And so they have issues of flaking and coming apart, and the laminate on the desk is kind of peeling. So there's some items that are in need of replacement in the classroom space. The other thing that's a challenge is that this particular classroom is kind of separated from other parts of the school. Like I said, it's in a lower than grade position in the school, and it's kind of separated off from the other classrooms. You'll notice in the space, although you've got a couple of different options for students. They can sit either at a space with no desktop, or they can sit at a space where there's a desktop present. So in the center of the classroom where those wood grain tables are, there's a series of 4 tables that don't have any computers, and then all the rest of the seating locations do. And for my classes that don't require the desktops, I've found that those spaces without computers go pretty quickly. So next is an example of another classroom at my school. One of the things I wanted to highlight here is in this space there's lots of windows for lots of natural light in my classroom. With it being below grade, it's not as easy to get natural light into the space. One of the other things that I found seemed to be really helpful or helpful to consider is that the student material that would be needed for the class is available and open to the students and really well organized. So should a student need something, it's pretty easy to find and use it for reference. This particular classroom is an English class at our school. So you'll also see in the top right-hand shot, there's some movie posters depicting some of the books that are being read in depending on the grade level, the stories are depicted there. But just something to bring a little bit of interest, some visual references to the stories that they're going to be reading, help students connect with those in a better way. You'll notice that there's a bulletin board which kind of illustrates a teacher's perspective on success, which is helpful and helps the students understand what the expectations are going to be inside the classroom. And then the bottom right is also a series of information steps and information so students understand how the teachers can interact with them. It's based on the Love and Logic approach. And then the bottom left, there are some depictions of student progress on some given projects, and you can see their post-it notes showing there to show how students are progressing. One of the things in this space is, along with the space that I have at our school, most of the places for students to sit are kind of fixed. You can move a chair around, you can move a whole table around, but the tables are relatively large in size, and so it's not very terribly flexible. So I want to talk a little bit about what I think might be a little bit of a more ideal classroom. I'm showing some pictures over on the right-hand side. The idea is that I think it'd be good that it's good to give to include a mix of different furnishings in a classroom space. So a classroom might have an area like you see on the top right, an area like you see on the top left, grouped together in the same classroom. And an example of how something like that might work can be seen in the bottom picture. And it shows different areas and different ways students could choose to be able to engage with the class. So I think just like in differentiating instruction, and I think it's important that as much as we can, we look for ways to give students choice in how they're going to be interacting not only with the learning, but also with their environment. When they're at home or in the rest of the world, they have a choice of where they sit during the day. They have a choice of how they're going to work with this space. And I think it's something we can help students to learn is how to help leverage a space to work for them. So there are some benefits to each of the different photos you see here, but I think each of them are feasible for multiple different approaches when it comes to delivering instruction. You can see there's some desktop areas. The key here, I think, is also some mobility and flexibility. So the top right picture and the bottom picture show a series of tables. Those tables, whether they're behind the seating, like in the top right corner, or are on their own in the bottom shot, are able to be moved around and configured in a different way so that the teacher and students have some choice in how the classroom is going to be arranged. It can be done relatively quickly so that you can make the classroom kind of adapt to what you're looking to accomplish during the day of instruction. The other thing that I found is a way that I can improve in my classroom space is by working to connect to the content that I'm teaching within the classroom a little bit better. So in the top picture, you see a reference to some AP styles as part of an English class. And so including some visual references to concepts that are being shared in the class, I think is a good thing to add. in the classroom space and having it really visible and referenceable for students. I can see that being really helpful for them. Also, the idea of changing that information semi-regularly, maybe by unit, helps the space to feel fresh and like it's not stale over time. Helps the students feel like not only is their learning progressing, but the space they're in is progressing as they learn. And then I think it is important to have areas that might have a fixed purpose but changing content. So these boards are a good example of something that might the board is going to stay, but the content on them is going to change over time. And a good example of that might be some of the key terms or vocabulary associated with a unit being posted in an area like that during the unit and then switched out when the next unit comes up. So these are all ways I think that we can help a classroom be more effective for instruction and for learning each day. One of the other things that you can see here, a little bit more on what I think an ideal classroom might look like is comparatively compared to my classroom space, an update to some of the furnishings. And by that, I think paying attention to the physical space that students are in helps students understand that they're important to the school and to the district. When students are in a space that doesn't seem like it's well kept, it's easy for them to come away from the class with the feeling that having a space prepared for them isn't important, and so it communicates a lack of importance to them. So I think the other thing that keeping a space up to date can do is help them connect with current thinking and relevance, right? So helps the content be more relevant to a student. So by addressing the way a classroom is structured based on the content that's being taught and current information about instruction, students can feel a little bit more like what they're learning is relevant to what my hope would be more relevant to what they're doing in the future. Like I said before, an updated space communicates to a learner that they're important. If a classroom isn't important to be updated and maintained, then a learner might take away from that they're not as important as we might actually really consider them to be. And the other thing too is by creating these updates, by bringing in items from the unit around the classroom and the walls, by adjusting how the space can function, being mobile and flexible, helping to support active learning techniques that we might bring to the classroom, breaking out into group discussions, things of that nature. The idea is we really want to help the space not be a distraction from the learning. There are going to be transition times during class. We want to make them as distraction-free as possible so students can stay focused on accomplishing what the purpose of the activity is during school. So those are my thoughts. Thanks for joining me today.